So today I'm checking out this new monitor from Pixio, which just came out, and this is their new PX27U, which is a 27-inch high refresh 4K monitor, which I'm actually finding out is a little bit more rare than I originally thought. It's not that high refresh 4K monitors don't exist, but finding one that's 27 inches and over 144 Hz is a little bit of a hard time, not to mention those don't typically come in different colors to match your setup. Now obviously I see a ton of 32-inch 4K displays, which are great mind you, but for anybody who wants something a little bit smaller, this may very well be the only choice to get. What does it for me though is that it does have full console support for my PlayStation 5, which works well with variable refresh rate, auto latency mode, as well as HDR support. That, and relative to other 4K gaming monitors, this one is actually super affordable. I will have this monitor and everything in my desk setup linked down below in the video description, and thanks to Pixio for sending this out my way for review. Now in my case, I did end up going with the black version, although this does come in white, blue, and pink as well. And getting right into the unboxing, there's really not much here. You've got a manual, the 2-piece stand, a DisplayPort cable, as well as the monitor itself. The stand is a snap and quick release setup that goes together with one singular screw, and beyond that it's made well being all metal. However, it does only have tilt adjustments. If you do want a little bit more than that, you are going to want to throw this monitor up onto a desk shelf for added height, or invest in a monitor arm, which will pretty much annihilate just about any monitor stand anyways. I do usually prefer the aesthetic of a monitor arm as well, so the desk space you get back and the unlimited adjustability for me is just the way to go. This monitor can be had for $399, so even if you did want to budget for an inexpensive monitor arm, that's probably the way to go as well. Now from an aesthetic standpoint, it's going to depend on whether you got the black, pink, blue, or white, but this monitor is built well and it's super minimal. I really do think more companies should invest in different colored monitors, since it is an easy way to complete just about any desk setup. Still, the 27-inch display is edge to edge with minimal Pixio branding on the chin itself. Apart from that, you do have some buttons on the bottom side here to access the menus, which I will get into in a little bit. As for the specs, this does have just about everything you'd want when it comes down to gaming, creation, and even productivity. The panel itself is a 4K fast IPS panel, which does give you better viewing angles compared to TN or VA, and the colors on here do look great regardless of whatever's on screen. From a gaming standpoint, this does have a 160 Hz refresh rate and a 1 millisecond response time with a 27-inch display size, which is typically considered the largest you'd probably want to get when it comes down to competitive shooters, but that sort of just depends on what type of person you are. I will touch more on gaming shortly, but as for the ports you got on this monitor, you do have two DisplayPort 1.4s, an audio jack for any sort of headset or speakers, and what I'm really happy to see here on this monitor are that the two HDMI ports are 2.1 supported, which will give you that full 120 Hz glory when it comes down to the PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X. The one thing I wasn't expecting to have on this monitor is a set of speakers. I'm unsure what spec they are, but they sound somewhere between the dual 3 or 5 watt range. I can't particularly say they sound that good, to be completely honest, but they will get the job done if you're just doing some more chill gaming or consuming content. As for my setup and the way I've got this monitor going, I have hooked it up to my PlayStation 5 through one of the two HDMI 2.1 ports, and the other HDMI 2.1 port is hooked up to my Thunderbolt 4 dock that will give me that single cable connection to either my MacBook or iPad whenever I'm doing any sort of creative work. The audio jack on here is going directly into my Cancel U4 speakers, which are straight up amazing speakers connecting to both my monitor and my vinyl player at once. And as for that DisplayPort, I do have this connected directly to my PC, of course, which will pretty much smash just about any game I want to throw at it. And speaking of gaming, jumping right in, this really does do a good job across the board. Playing games like XDefiant or Call of Duty are an easy good time, since it does take full advantage of the HDMI 2.1 ports. Since this monitor does have support for auto low latency mode, everything from an FPS standpoint is pretty much near instant regardless of whatever I'm playing. With that, you also have variable refresh rate support, which unlocks the frame rate in certain games, giving you a smoother experience. Where some games might have typically locked you to 30 or 60 FPS, variable refresh rate allows your PlayStation 5 to float somewhere between 48 to 120 FPS in whatever games are actually supported, giving you overall just a much better experience. And even if you are hard locking 60 FPS in certain games that don't go beyond that, you still have an awesome 4K HDR image, which is definitely the way to enjoy your games. Likewise, while this monitor doesn't carry any sort of AMD or Nvidia branding, it does still support adaptive sync, so there's zero graphical tearing, stuttering, or any sort of issues while gaming. Overall, from the console standpoint, everything here is just about as good as it gets. Moving over to the PC side, this is where you really do get to take full advantage of the 160 Hz refresh rate, since this monitor does support up to that. Although most people will typically use DisplayPort, you can also use the HDMI 2.1, since both can give you the full 160 Hz. For me at least, my main PC game still remains Overwatch 2, where I'm somehow still actually decent despite being a grandpa when it comes to the relative age in these lobbies nowadays. For me at least, I do still find 27 inches to be the sweet spot for most gaming, since it's decent enough size for competitive FPS games, while still being large enough for other types of games. For this though, I am typically hard locking 160 FPS in Overwatch, which overall is a bit of an easier game to run on just about any PC, but regardless, PC or console, jumping into those more cinematic titles, you really do get a great image here, and in 4K, this really does look great. This monitor does also have HDR support if that's something you're into. While I'm not sure if it's real HDR coming in at 400 nits peak brightness, it does make a huge difference when it comes down to consoles versus PC. I think that does come down to system configurations and stuff, but it's there if you do need it, and I still prefer how it looks. If we are looking at stuff outside of gaming, this display does an awesome job when it comes down to watching any sort of media as well. Right now, I've been slowly working my way through the original Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z series since I haven't really watched those in about 20 years. Still, whatever you do watch on here, this monitor does a great job with colors. Not that I particularly measure or calibrate my displays anyways. If you are a normie like myself, you will really enjoy this monitor either way. Outside of that though, when it comes down to productive work, there are two machines I will be hooking up to this monitor, one being my MacBook Air and my Windows gaming PC. And one of the things I didn't quite realize how much I missed working on this display over the last 2 weeks is just how much I actually love the 27-inch size when it comes to 4K. It's not that 4K on a 32-inch display size is bad whatsoever, but having 4K on 27 inches is just excellent when it comes down to text clarity and the way the image looks overall. That and scaling on a 4K display is still awesome. For myself, I typically scale my Windows PC to about 125%, since 100% scaling simply makes text a little bit too small. On the Mac side of things, I typically scale my display to the native 4K fully or just one step below that, and it really does give me a ton of room for editing my video timelines. When it comes down to editing my videos and stuff though, I do have plenty of room to work with here, and the colors are definitely good enough for basic color grading, although I'm no professional. As for the menus and other stuff, it's all pretty much basic, just adding things like timers and crosshairs while gaming, toggling your HDR on or off, or changing the speaker of the volumes. One thing to know is if you do want to access all the other preset visuals, you do have to turn HDR off, just something to be aware of inside the menus. But when it comes down to everything I've spoken about with this monitor, who's it really for? Honestly, I can quite actually say just about anybody. It's priced really competitively, so it's way easier on the wallet at about 400 bucks. So for anybody who does want a solid, more affordable pick, this one is an absolute no-brainer. With a 27-inch display size, having a full 4K is brilliant in just about any desk setup. So for anybody who doesn't want that beefier 32-inch 4K display size, this easily becomes the next best option. And of course, when it comes down to gaming, for the price at least, it's really hard to beat a 4K display like this for either console or PC gamers. And despite owning multiple monitors about 4 times the cost of this one, with a 27-inch screen size alone, this will probably be a main monitor in my setup for the next while. But what do you guys think about this monitor? If you do have any questions about it, be sure to leave them down below in the comment section. I'll be happy to get back to you. I appreciate you watching till the end. Till next time.